You must have this special.
Hey, guys, guys. All I want is a Pepsi.
They must stop her. But now the express has lost time. She'll be late unless driver Tony and Mungo, his mate, can make up 4 minutes and nearly a quarter on the difficult stretch running over the border.
2, 1, 0. All engine running.
Humans are the only species among all living organisms on the planet that are blessed with cognitive capabilities. Cognition is the ability to interpret or make meaning of divergent signals. When one is confronted by divergent signals, the greatest intelligence is not to ignore it, but rather recognize it and set a process of inquiry, exploration, and discovery to make meaning of it. Right at the outset, it should be very clear that intelligence, which is the ability to interpret data and then relate it to a relevant context, is the most important input to the process of innovation. On the inbound logistics, it is the data of the 5 elements coming together, including earth, water, heat, ether, and wind, that fuse together to make this planet a habitable one. As humanity, we have exploited the resources, materials, and energy that have been organically created to convert them into products and services. But not enough scientific thought has been developed other than exploiting them. The real human side of innovation is being able to transform this exploitation to empowerment. That requires conditioning human intelligence right from the tender age of 8 to 18, that we now call Gen A, and 18 to 25, Gen Z, who need to aspire and work diligently towards creating a more sustainable planet. The very essence of human cognition, or for that matter, any living organism, is love. And love without intelligence is more dangerous than hatred. The problem at the operations level is the mindlessness of creating applications that are not moved to a scientific solution in the greed to make more money. For example, if refined sugar is bad for a human's health, how can we find alternate materials that will provide the same joy in products without compromising on nutrition and health? For innovation to succeed at a human level, the focus should be on the 7 stations of life, including environment, education, technology, mobility, wealth, health, and governance. Despite the existential threat in each one of these 7 stations, we find industries and institutions ignoring it, blind in the pursuit of profits. Even worse, they are using intelligence for habit forming around the products and services they create. At an individual level, the focus on sharpening the 5 senses of touch, taste, sight, smell, and sound should influence all innovation, drawing inspiration at life's operational level, because they are the tools for cognition. Imagine if you had nothing to do after waking up every morning. Human nature is conditioned to work, and that conditioning should be an intelligent one to produce transformational and sustainable outcomes. We are at the cusp of history on this planet when a new era is about to unfold. The human side of innovation must fuse the 5 elements of data, talent, materials, capital, and infrastructure with exponentially greater intelligence in order to make our lives more humane. And here lies both the challenge and opportunity to live the human side of innovation. Is there a need to stress here that learning, which is observation by all the 5 senses, leads to intelligence? It is this intelligence that feeds into innovation. When that innovation blends the Taoist principles of simplicity, patience, and compassion, it makes for a perfect example of the human side of innovation. While I learned, with open pores, no ego in the way. It seemed that many other students were frozen in place, repeating their errors over and over, unable to improve because of a fear of releasing old habits. When Chen made suggestions, they would explain their thinking in an attempt to justify themselves. They were locked up by the need to be correct. This beautiful quote from Joshua Waitzkin, a renowned chess and martial arts champion, clearly illustrates the problem we face with the human side of innovation. Love and learning are missing from what we recognize as innovation today. This episode features the celebrated Mauro Porcini, Chief Design Officer at PepsiCo. He has recently authored the New York bestseller, The Human Side of Innovation, The Power of People in Love with People. He led 3M's innovation before PepsiCo and is the host of the popular podcast on Apple, In Your Shoes with Mauro Porcini. Mauro, it's a great privilege and a pleasure welcoming you to this episode of The Future of Work with Subbu Iyer.
It's my pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me.
The first two questions are from your book, which is The Human Side of Innovation. The first one is the current chairman and CEO. He recognizes your body of work with something which is a very significant term. He calls it reservoirs of value. And to me, that is beyond praise, that kind of recognition. Can you talk to it, Mauro?
You want me to talk about what he meant? You want to talk about the support that I get from Ramon Laguarta, the CEO? I think Ramon is understanding that human centricity, and therefore this design-driven approach to innovation, to branding, to business, it's a fundamental driver of value for the company. Value in different dimensions is the value we create for people, for the people we serve, is the value we create also for the organization, for the company, for the people working inside the corporation. And finally, obviously, is the financial value, the business value that we create for the entire organization. You understand that culture, people driving that kind of approach is key, is very important. It's more important than any process and tool and methodology. And this is why sponsoring this approach in the organization, this is why he decided to write a forward for the book. I think any company needs CEOs that understand that kind of value, the value of human centricity in this kind of environment we live in today, in this hyper-competitive, global, tech-savvy, digital, social media-driven world we live in. We need CEOs that understand that the creation of human value is a priority. And if you do that, if you do it right, if you do it in a sustainable way in time, then business value will come as well. They're all connected, obviously, but you can't, in a sustainable way, in time, build business value without also creating value for people, society, and the planet in this new world we live in today.
Indra Nooyi talking about two very distinct things. One is she calls design a language, and she credits it to you by saying there was a PepsiCo before Mauro, and there is a PepsiCo after his advent into PepsiCo.
When Indra wrote that, or she said that also in other occasions on stage, it's, is a source of great pride for me. But the reality is that is a beautiful sentence, but obviously is me, is the entire design organization, is all the business leaders that were there, is Indra, obviously herself, and how the entire company embraced that language, as she called it, and as you mentioned. And if you think about language, let's think about the definition of language. Jacobson in the 50s, the the linguist Jacobson, define the key ingredients, the key elements, the key variables that define meaning in the language, in an act of communication. There is always a sender, there is a message, there is a receiver, there is a code, there is a media, there is a context, and there are noises. So let's think about this world we live in today. We focus, I talk about this in the book a lot. We focus on the message so much when we build a brand, when we create a company, when we create a political campaign. In any kind of situation, there are armies of people that focus on what to say. And this is obviously very important, is one of the key pillars of what you're communicating. But the reality is that the way then you treat the code and the media can completely shift the meaning of what you are communicating. And often we overlook something like this. And in reality, once again, if you use the code and the media in a strategic way, it becomes very, very powerful. The code essentially is, when I talk to you right now, is the English language, but it's also my Italian accent, is my body language, is the way I move my hands, but it's also the way I dress, is the house where I am that somehow is impacting what I'm saying. If I was in a different kind of environment, for the people looking at us right now, my message would have eventually a slightly different nuance, a different meaning. So the code is everything that you hear, that you see, and this is really, really important. And then the media, in this case, I'm talking to you through a mic. There is the screen that people are using to look at us. There is the Riverside platform where we're recording all of this. That's all media. Now, let's translate that in the world of branding. When we try to build a message for a brand like Pepsi, or for a new technology, let's say a new product like Tesla, so innovation in the world of automotive. So it could be an established product, a cola, or it could be a new product to the world, Tesla. The language, the visuals, the way we talk about it in communication, all of this is key and impacts the meaning, the ability of people to fall in love with what you're communicating, the ability of people to use in a better way, in an easier way, what you create and what you design. All that word is a design word. It's the ability to arrive to people, to their heart, to their brain in a more direct way, in a more impactful way. Is the ability to create connections and love with people that transcend rationality, that go deep in their heart, that build the loyalty that any brand or any company or any organization of any kind outside of the business world as well would love to have with people today. And today is more important than ever because we live in a very visual kind of world, in a world where we're bombarded by images every day, every time we open our phones. And statistics tell us that data tell us that we are on our phones, depending on the region of the world, between 4 to 7 hours per day, bombarded by images, bombarded by content. And so the more you are able to use the design language to arrive to people in a meaningful way, and the more you are able to understand people and understand how to be meaningful to them, the more you will be able to build a love connection between you, your company, your brands, and the people you serve.
All your narrative that you have had journeys in curiosity and you have had journeys in creativity. And it is plainly evident that you have connected them within you to express yourself. How do you see that? I think at some point in time, there is a way in which you have to limit yourself in a corporate context. How do you cross the chasm from the personal journeys to the professional journeys, given the fact that we live in that environment and we owe our existence in that environment?
First of all, for me, the two realities are really blurred. My personal life and my professional life are one and the same because my job is my passion, is my mission, is what I love to do, is something that transcends the job itself, because I'm a designer 24/7. It's the way I dress, it's the friends I have, it's the books I read, the trip I take, the house that I have, and so on and so forth. So now this is great on one side, but it could be also a problem from another side. And it was in the past when I didn't understand how to build certain boundaries between the task that my job requires and the commitment that my friends, my family, my personal life required. But I understood that many years ago, through the experiences of life, to maintain a right balance between those tasks is important. But there is a huge difference between the task that you do for your job and where your mind is, where your culture is. So I may be enjoying time with my friends and having something that is totally, a time that is totally unrelated with the world of PepsiCo, but my mind is always geared towards finding opportunities, finding new ideas, finding new projects. And I always see PepsiCo as an amazing platform to reach billions of people, to create value for them. And I believe that if we create value for them, I will create value for the company as well. So this is, the first answer is that the two dimensions are really blurred together, but in a very healthy way. Then the second part of the answer is that you're right. In the corporate world, you face a lot of roadblocks, and in your private life, you can do whatever you want. So you can use that curiosity and that creativity without any boundaries and any limit. But I think, as a designer, I always loved the power of constraints. I always loved the power of limits, because the role of a designer and an entrepreneur and an innovator in general is the one of seeing those constraints as an opportunity. Where you see a constraint, when you see something that is not working or is stopping you from doing something bigger and greater, well, that's exactly where the designer, the innovator, the entrepreneur goes, because you want to change that limit. You want to transform the unfeasible in feasible. The joy that I get in doing my job is a joy that try to always connect itself to the big picture. I get joy in the progress that I see in the movement from the status quo to a better future. And so in a company, in corporations, in an industry, in a society with multiple constraints, my mind goes always to those constraints, and I think, how can I change that? How can I change the problem of sustainability in our food and beverage industry, health and wellness, personalization? How can I introduce technology in unexpected ways into this kind of industry? How can I change the eventual constraints of a big corporation, with all the infrastructure and the culture typical of any corporation? And how can I help making the culture more agile, more flexible, more similar to the one of a startup, if you want, but leveraging the scale of the corporation that the startup will wish to have.
The statement that you make, that when you joined PepsiCo, your mental framework was that you would take up this challenge of PepsiCo being much more than just a sugar water company, which is amazing, because that's your design thinking. You have framed a question, how do I take it? This book really is not just a biography. It is like a pulsing narrative of what went on that many of us, or all of us, can actually be inspired by. You talk about finding talent, the right kind of talent, in order to build a team, and then bringing friends together. It brings its own challenges. And then there is this expectation that you have been brought in from 3M, who is a chief design officer there, into a food and beverage industry which you knew nothing about. But you have a very fertile mind, which nobody contended with. So talk us through that.
It's been a fascinating journey. Essentially, when I talk about that journey, I talk about these 5 different steps I went through to build that kind of culture in PepsiCo, and even before in 3M, because let's say that 3M has been for 10 years my training ground. I learned so much in that company trying to build design inside the organization. And then I took that learning to PepsiCo, and that helped me being much more effective in what I was doing, because I had my failures before, and I learned from those, and I learned from the successes as well. The first step is when you arrive to an organization and the organization is in denial. They don't understand that they need you, they need the culture you're introducing or everything you're pitching. If the company stays in denial and the company really needs that new culture, the company is going to get in trouble sooner or later. And we see what happened, for instance, in companies like Blockbuster or Kodak and many others that stayed in denial for too long, and when they realized it was too late. Then the reality is that most of the times there is an executive, somebody at the top of the company, that realizes that you need to change something. And often that change comes through people. They introduce a new team, they try to organize something different within the organization. I call this second, well, I'll tell you in a second how I call this phase, because this is where the answer to your questions come. Essentially, in this phase, let's say, in the case of 3M, in the case of PepsiCo, they decided to hire a change agent, somebody that will come in and introduce this new culture. So here I am, and what a lot of people may think is that I went into these companies were not design driven, and I would face a lot of pushback, a lot of roadblocks and challenges. The reality is that it's not being really like this. And usually I tell a story of what happened in 3M, because that's where I realized the way of thinking and behaving of human beings in these kind of situations. When I went to PepsiCo, I knew very well what to do. So in 3M, here I am, they hire me in Italy, in the consumer business. It was one of the 6 businesses of the company, just to work on Europe. So being the design manager there in Europe. I remember I was 27, I take my luggage, I go to St. Paul, Minnesota to meet all these business leaders and R&D leaders from the organization. And I will pitch my design ideas with a lot of passion, with much more passion than you can hear in my voice today. It was more than 20 years ago. And everybody loved it. So I didn't see the challenges. I just saw people really, really passionate about what I was pitching, what I was sharing with them. And I remember after the first few meetings going to the office of my executive sponsor, Dr. Monosari, to share with him that actually things were going well, and the company was really embracing this idea of design thinking and design-driven innovation. And so here I am in front of Mo, and Mo is always a very serious person, but the day was more serious than ever. He looks at me, telling him this, and he tells me, everybody's lying to you. I'm like, Mo, how is it possible? Look, you are not there. I was there. I could feel, the room. They really meant it. They really support what we're trying to do. And he looks at me and he goes on and he told me, I'm telling you that they're all lying to you. And then he goes on and he explains with an analogy what he meant. He told me, imagine you are in an art gallery and there is a beautiful painting in front of you and you have a lot of money in your pocket. What would you do? You would buy the painting. I mean, it's something that you really, really love, okay? You're really passionate about. You buy the painting. Now, Mauro, you and design, you are one of those paintings in the 3M art gallery. And there are many other paintings out there. And people are not buying you. They're buying other paintings. They're buying the HR program painting. They're buying the next investment in a plant. They're not buying design. And that was a huge aha moment for me, because I realized that he was right. So I was going in the company thinking I was going to face a lot of roadblocks. I faced instead a lot of people that were nice to me and then were telling me, well, yes, what you say makes sense. But at the end, I realized that that was not the reality. This second phase is what I call the hidden rejection. People, when you pitch something new, may tell you that they're okay with it for multiple different reasons. Maybe because they don't want to disappoint you. They feel uncomfortable telling you the truth. Maybe because you have a good sponsor behind you and they don't want to go against your sponsor. Maybe because we as a human beings, we love to think that we're loved and that our ideas are appreciated. And so even when they send us weak signals that, they don't really like what we're saying, we don't see them. We're blind to that. Long story short, when we try to change culture, often we may find ourselves in situations where we think we're getting a lot of traction, but we're not at all. And it's important to develop techniques to understand if we're getting that traction or if in reality, the company, the people surrounding us are pushing back on us without us realizing it. So the very simple technique that I developed back then at 3M and that I used when I joined PepsiCo is this one. Every time I pitch an idea, I ask for a commitment. I ask for money, resources, some form of involvement. I call it the sacrifice. People need to be with me in that. When you ask for that, people will step back. They will drop off. They will be like, oh yeah, I love your idea, but right now I have other priorities. But in 2 months, 3 months, we can do it. And so that's fine, because you need to identify the people that want to be with you for real. Usually they're 1 out of 10. It's 10% of people. This comes from the statistic connected to the curve of adoption of new products. People willing to try a new product as soon as it comes out, or a new technology, usually 2-3% of population. People that come immediately after are around 7-8%. So the people that are really willing to try something new, and this applies to culture as well, early on is 10-12%. Everybody else follows. So you need to find that 10-12% in the company. And it's not just that. They need to be connected to the right projects. So when I joined PepsiCo with that kind of awareness, I partner with HR to map all the co-conspirators. This is how I call those people that are willing to try new things, and the projects where we could show value through design as fast as possible. Speed was essential. It didn't need to be perfect, but we needed to show progress fast. And so I call this third phase, when I identify the co-conspirators and we start to work on proof points, projects that show the value of the new culture, the occasional leap of faith. When these co-conspirators take the leap of faith, occasionally, 1 out of 10, and you build those proof points. The more proof points you have, the more credibility you build, the more people will come to you to try the new culture. When you're right to critical scale, the company will be like, wait a second, here there is value. We need to really scale it up for real. We need to invest in it. And this is when you move to the fourth phase, the quest for confidence, when you need to build confidence in the organization that that thing at scale makes sense. And when we talk about scale, we talk about huge investments, big visibility. You need to move from just pure intuition to processes, tools, ways of working, but you need to protect the intuition, the love, the entrepreneurship of the individuals, of the people. Often companies fail because they kill that intuition, love, and entrepreneurship with processes and tools. Once you pass this phase, the culture is embedded inside the organization, and you move to the fifth phase. That is what I call the holistic awareness, and is really when the culture is now a key driver of everything that the organization does.
We are in a cusp at this point in time, looking at a new era, a new world order that is completely talking about a very different value system, completely different from what we have been used to historically up to this point in time, with transversal technologies impacting all the 7 stations of life, as I call it. I have great respect for the work that PepsiCo does in the ESG space. And I also believe that quite a bit of what the work that you do leads itself into those areas, whether it is working with farmers to increase crop productivity or new kind of crops, or increasing soil conservation. In different parts of the world, you actually work. Can you talk how you are taking this culture to respond in very different ways than what we might have been used to a new world that might have very different economic, social, political, and even personal realities?
Yeah. We call this approach a local approach to what we do. Is this mix between global and local, and this is really fundamental. I realized how to do it, if you want. Many years ago, I was still at 3M once again, and I was based in Italy, and the Taiwan market and the Chinese market asked us help, design help. The 3M Taiwan, 3M China. And so we started to work with them from Italy, going frequently in China, in Taiwan, actually immediately after Japan as well. And so I would spend so much time in those countries, and we will do projects with them from Italy with, by the way, not just Italian designers, but a mix of different nationalities from Italy. Nothing worked very well. It was not working out. I realized back then that the only way to work with Taiwan, with China, with Japan was to build teams there. And so I realized it very simply because I did it and I saw how everything changed from night to day. That's when I realized that the only way to be really global in what you do is through having people located in different regions around the world. That was the first realization. Now, the problem of just doing that is that you may end up decentralizing everything and not being able to have the people unite around the same global values, the same global beliefs, and the same global strategy as well. And so this is where I realized the importance of having these people directly connected to me, to the organization at the center, and I needed to choose the right people. You know, in the book is all about people. So it's about choosing the right people and making sure that there are people that understand those human values that are universal to any kind of reality. There are things, you know, this idea of love, this idea of caring for the planet, this idea of caring for the people you serve. There are these values that are totally universal. So it's important to understand what are those values, how to link them back, in the case of a company, to business value as well. So you have these human values and human truths. You link them to business value. They create value for the company. You understand leader in China, leader in India, leader in Brazil, leader in South Africa, that this is what drives us as a company. We have also assets. We have products eventually. We have brands. So you understand the global nature and values of those products and brands. And then it's up to you, understanding all of this, to translate that in something that makes sense in your region. And so my leaders, I have 15 different locations around the world. The different leaders of the different regions, they are totally empowered. They are so autonomous and independent because I know that they understand the global vision, the global values, and then their role is to make magic in that culture, you know, with the right codes, with the right messages, with the right media, with the right products. And so this is, you know, my personal design story in PepsiCo and in 3M. But this is what you were mentioning earlier, Ramon Laguarta, Indra Nooyi, I've been doing in all these years, transforming a company that many years ago was very decentralized in a global company, but very respectful of local differences. That for us is really, really important, because food is so different from a region of the world to the other. So to understand local culture is key for us, but to also leverage our global strengths, brands, technologies, and products is very important as well.
We are creating this system where the 8 to 18, which is Gen A, and the 18 to 25, which is the Gen Z, are extremely critical in terms of the kind of mindsets they create, how they design their minds to look at the value in society so that they can contribute to it. Because today, a lot of them don't even know how to formulate that value, leave alone being able to subscribe and deliver to that value. What are your perspectives? How can we bring about that social change? Because I'm sure that you face that same problem of talent of different levels in the organization to sustain this great work that you have started or you have embarked upon the transformational journey?
I love the word of philosophy. I've been studying philosophy. I started when I was 16, talking about being young, and I fell in love with it. And all the way until today, I found and I find in the world of philosophy essentially all the answers to all our questions, over the years. We have thousands of people that dedicated their lives to understand the fundamental and universal human truths. And those truths, those values, somehow are the anchor then that we can rely on no matter what's going on around us in the world, in a societal change, in a specific moment in time, in our business, in our world. And so when I think about new generations, mixed and blended with our generation and the older generation, all the people living in this world right now, I think if in schools, in families when you don't have a broken family, but in schools and in corporations, we will teach people the value of these fundamental truths, the value of kindness, the value of curiosity, the value of optimism, the value of respect. If these kids, let's say you're coming from a broken family, but will go to school and their teachers will have classes in mathematics, but then classes on kindness, with real stories, and show how kindness is creating a better world, but also how kindness is creating better companies, how kindness can help you creating a better business. If they will teach us the value of respect, the value of optimism at school, we will create a better society. We will give tools to these kids. You were mentioning the new generations. I think one of the biggest problems that they have, and I really want to see how they will manage all of this, is that they're bombarded by information, and very early on. So if I'm bombarded by information at 47, I had a life to develop certain filters to decodify those information, to analyze what I'm receiving, and to interpret those informations. But if I receive so many informations when I'm 5, when I'm 7, when I'm 10, I don't have the tools to filter all of this. And so we should reshape education, rethink education, to build the tools to manage those informations. I mean, there is a huge difference. When I was a kid at school, I needed to study history because I didn't have a phone where I can find all the different answers to all my questions about history, or about geography, or about mathematics, or anything else. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't teach all of those things, but there is a big difference. Right now, what we need is a level of awareness about those words that give us the possibility to then dig into those words through the devices that we have, to the technology that we have. We don't need to memorize the data because the data is accessible outside of our brain. We need the tools to understand those words so we can access that. Now, with the free time left in our day at school, we should invest that time to educate these children in building the ability to filter the information, the ability to connect with others, the ability to define their identity in this world that is so complex, the ability to understand that the most important thing in life is not wealth or fame, but is happiness. Understanding what is the journey towards that happiness. I close the book talking about how to design happiness, investing in yourself and your identity in the society we live in is your job and many other things that you do that define you, your original and unique point of view on life. The second dimension is investing in people close to you, is your family, is your friends, is your close community, is the love that you selflessly give and the love that you receive in exchange, and is the joy that you have by giving love and receiving love. And then the third dimension is something bigger than us, is something transcending us, is purpose, is something that you do to give back, is charity work, or is, in my case, for instance, is the way I look at the companies I work for, like PepsiCo, as a platform to do something bigger than me, than the company, helping the world in some form or way. So is something bigger than you that in a way or the other helps you becoming immortal, defeating death, creating memories that will last even when you're gone, or legacy, if you prefer to call it in this way. We need to teach to kids out there right away that what they need to do in this world is look for happiness, that happiness implies working on themselves, working on the people around them, and working on the broader community and society. And we need to give them the tool to do all of this.
There is a beautiful quote in your book from Albert Einstein: an intuitive mind is a sacred gift, while a rational mind is a faithful servant. So can you talk to it?
It's important that people understand that you bring something unique to the table. Now, there are two different situations. You can be lucky and you find in front of you a person that no matter what is curious, is open-minded, is humble. These are three characteristics of the unicorns, by the way, of these leaders I talk about in the book. And to be honest, I found many leaders like this in my life. If I think about the executive team of PepsiCo today, and again, I'm not the kind of person that promote the company just for promoting the company. So when I say nice things about the company, I really mean them. Many of them are open-minded. They know that they know certain things, but they're listening because they know they can learn more. Not everybody, but there are many. So this is a positive message. There are companies that have that kind of culture, and if your company doesn't have that kind of culture broadly, do not assume that corporations are like this, because it doesn't have to be like this. It's not the case. It's time to change. So again, scenario one is you find a person that anyway is gonna listen to you because you bring something different to the table. The truth, though, is that you find also people that don't. Something that I did over the years to overcome that is to make sure that I could build a personal brand, a brand for myself as Mauro, that immediately, intuitively, will communicate the fact that I have specific knowledge in my field that is unique, that I bring something to the table that is unique. So being very active in social media at the beginning, I'm talking about many, many years ago, where I didn't have eventually the credibility to write a book or to have a podcast, but with the platforms that I had at the very beginning, begging my university professors to give me the possibility to give lectures in universities, and then step by step, growing and giving lectures in conferences, and then the first interviews started, and every time there was an opportunity, it could be an interview, it could be a podcast, or it could be a conference, going there with a unique point of view, not just regurgitating corporate messages or the projects that we did and just talking about the project, but always having a philosophy, a point of view, a message connected to the story I was telling. By doing that over and over and over again for years, you start to build a certain credibility. And by the way, it's not just the media platform, but doing that at work, in every kind of situation. You are in a meeting, you are in a conversation at the dinner or at the coffee machine, and always share your point of view and really show that you know your word in a unique way. Once you have that credibility, even the people that eventually are more arrogant, less open to listen to you, when you enter the room, they know that you know something that probably they don't. And so this has been very powerful for me to communicate that. There is also, now this is unique to me being a designer. Sorry, this is my dog that is asking me to take her up the table. So now this additional story I'm going to tell you is unique to me as a designer. on top of everything I said, part of my knowledge and expertise is understanding style and aesthetics and trend. So I've been using also my outfits, my body language, the way I dress, the way I behave, to intuitively send signals about my understanding, my authority, if you want, in the world. So when I enter a room dressed in a certain way, when GQ put me in the list of the 30 best dressed men of Italy, all those little things intuitively are sending a message of somebody that understands aesthetic. That when look at the packaging or the design of a product, knows what he's talking about. So I've been leveraging, we were talking about the grammar of language of Jacobson earlier. I've been leveraging the code, the visual code in everything I do, the language, and the media platform where I was communicating in a very strategic way to build my personal brand that would help me having a seat at the table more meaningful, more relevant in those conversations with people that eventually were not that open to listen to me. But once again, in an ideal world, so this is a technique for the people that face people that are not open. But we are all, sooner or later in life, we are going to be the people on the other side of the table, the people that will be there, the decision makers, and other people will come to us. Let's remember always that we need to be open, that we need to be respectful, that we need to embrace a diversity of thinking, even when we think that the person in front of us eventually is not bringing something interesting to the table, that, what he or she is thinking is so different than what I believe in and what I think. Even in that case, let's listen, because there is always an opportunity to learn also for us. It could be that maybe we were wrong and that person is going to say something that is going to open our eyes, and because we had a blind spot. Or maybe, okay, if we reinforce, that person will reinforce our beliefs. But even that is good. Listening with open ears and open heart is so, so important for us and for the companies we work in and for.
What is the learnings that you have obtained in the process of writing this book and reaching it out?
Look, it's been wonderful. First of all, writing it is like therapy, because you take everything out as you do on the couch with a therapist, and then you read it and it's like interesting, this is true, this is not, this is real, this is not, and then you start to evolve your own thinking. Is like, as a designer, is exactly like prototyping. You prototype an idea, you create a mock-up, and then when you have it in front of you, you're like, oh, that was in my mind in this way, but actually I should do this and I should change that. So that was interesting because it helped me putting so much more clarity in all my thinking. So that was already enlightening. But the most beautiful part of writing a book is when the book is out and you receive feedback. And there is something magic that happened in the past few months, looking at the feedback of people, is the attention that the media and people in conferences and people I interact with are putting on specific messages of the book, especially this idea of kindness, of love, of empathy. Essentially, the people in love with people is the love for the people you serve. So he's really creating something extraordinary for them. Not thinking about making money on them, thinking about creating great, great experiences and solutions for them. And then money will come. Is the love then that you put in what you do, is the passion for what you do. And then the third dimension is the love for the people surrounding you, the people that you bring with you in this journey, because it's not a one woman or one man show anymore. It's a collective effort of a team, a cross-functional, diverse kind of team. And so the reaction of people to this idea of love, and then particularly to the power of kindness in all of this, how kindness drives productivity, effectiveness, efficiency, and I talk about this in the book, it's been mind-blowing. I mean, I met so many people, especially in conferences. I talk about kindness. I close my speeches talking about kindness, and I see people starting to cry. It happened multiple times, and they come to me, and essentially they tell me, "Wow, this is what we want to be. We want to be that in our companies, but." The problem is that people are bombarded by negativity so much today through social media or after COVID, now recession and all kind of struggles that we have in life. And then you go in companies and people are, they tell you to toughen up, and kindness is weakness and is vulnerability. And the reality is that kindness and empathy and love are so important. They're great drivers of productivity, they are great drivers of quality, they are great drivers of efficiency, and they were not that necessary 20, 30 years ago as they are today. Because today, in this hyper-competitive scenario we live in, these companies need to be hyper-efficient, hyper-productive, and you cannot afford the inefficiency of people not trusting each other, doing redundant activities to protect their back from one another, stabbing each other on the back, or not helping each other when one of the people have blind spots. You need people connected together, helping each other to avoid all of these things I just mentioned and more, because all of these things are inefficiencies. Multiply all of these things, these redundant activities, for the number of people in an organization, for hundreds of thousands of people. Imagine the lack of productivity that the lack of kindness is generating. We talk about productivity when we talk about investing in optimization of processes, cutting costs, laying off people eventually. We should talk about investing in productivity also by investing in kindness. So this is one of the key feedback that I received in the past few months, and made me aware that I need to double down on this, and I need to become more and more an ambassador of these values. And my call to action to anybody listening to us right now, for any person in a position of leadership, with some possibility to influence others, if you are a kind person, if you are a person that believes in this value, believes in love, talk about it. Don't just behave. You are behaving like this. You are one of those persons, but talk about the power of this. I met so many incredible leaders, very famous people we know in our business world or in society, and celebrities that are kind, loving people, but they don't talk about this. They don't talk about that kindness and love help them arriving to where they are. And instead, we hear about people that tell you need to be a shark, you need to be tough. And so too many people think that to be successful, you need to hide that kindness. You need to be tough in ways that are not necessary and actually are the opposite. Often they stop you from being successful.
As you write in your book, your entire life, you have converted a brief into a holistic calling. And what you just expressed just now, most of us, we spend our entire lifetime becoming rather than being. You're an inspiration. We wish and pray that you will continue this great work. And definitely, I'd like to resound all those other people that have been telling you that, yes, you must make this even more louder, because you are a very powerful voice. Your voice is heard, and this voice needs to be echoed much more in transforming our societies. Thank you so much for your time. Deeply appreciate, and hopefully look forward in any small way, to be able to contribute in the efforts that you lead the rest of us. Mauro, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been wonderful.
Innovation is nothing but the pursuit of excellence. It needs to be informed by design and intelligence in equal measure. Excellence is a journey, not a static junction. To progress on this journey, learning is critical. 4x greater than the 20x pace of change around us. Learning with intelligence that is cognitive in nature is rooted in causation and not just in the symptoms. There is a need for science to lead engineering, reversing the trend of the trigger-happy generations that have been quick to engineer objects without creating the systems for them. Curiosity-driven creativity is a must as we stare at a new era that will include many on this planet
hitherto who have not been participative in the system. They will need to be involved immersively to create a new world. And science is data from every sphere of life that is computed in real time from its source. The human side of innovation, the power of people in love with people, is a beacon of hope that has been authored by Mauro Porcini. It brings hope that corporations are thinking about people, not just customers and consumers. Only when that happens, as Mauro, chapter after chapter, talks in his book, will there be a better planet. Mauro, thank you so much for taking the time to participate in this video cast, even though you were sick. Deep respect for your commitment and professionalism. Please do hit the subscribe button to any of the channels this video cast is available on. Also do write to us and participate in this process of creating the new era. FOW@giggr.app is the email address that you need to write to. Happy holiday season, and we will return back with another episode #Tuesdays at 5 the following Tuesday.